It was Tuesday, February 7th, 2023, and I was back again at the Spring Creek in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. This beautiful little mountain town sits comfortably in the Allegheny mountain range and offers some superb scenery to take in, as well as equally exciting train watching opportunities for short-line rail fans like myself. The day started just as it did 24 hours ago, with NBER-4's light power waking up the Alleghenies as they trundled into Sunnyside Yard. Train 4 has the same great pair of Jeeps I chased the previous day, however there was a different train in the crosshairs this morning, the weekday Lock Haven or Pleasant Gap turn.
Apply 3 step conductor. Step conductor on the
I was hoping this turn may have been using sister railroad Lycoming Valley's GP35 as power, although that did not appear to be the case. There was only one way to find out for sure though, and I'm glad I stuck around long enough to watch the local rolling towards Pleasant Gap. It's the same crew that ran to Lock Haven the day prior, although today they're symboled BPG-1, Bellefonte to Pleasant Gap and return. The entirety of Nittany and Bald Eagle trackage is home to some wonderful scenery, and I had scouted out some great shots along the Pleasant Gap line that I was looking forward to watching the train traverse. What I desired more so, however, was to get one of those Reading-inspired Lycoming Valley GP35s in action, which sent me on a 51-mile warpath up to Williamsport. It was a risky detour, and parting ways with the Nittany and Bald Eagle was bittersweet, although bigger risk means bigger reward. Can't win them all, however, and I found no sign of the LVRR anywhere along their trackage. With that, I turned right back around and drove 2 hours southwest for the Pittsburgh line, more than happy to spend the rest of the day hitting some local hotspots. It started out on a good note, as an empty crude oil train was exiting the world-famous Gallitzin Tunnel. I was just passing through for now, but had every intention of getting a train at the tunnel later on in the week. For now, my sights were set on Cassandra, as an eastbound intermodal welcomed me to the Overlook. Talk about surreal. I had been wanting to stand on this very bridge for years and was left speechless as I finally found myself doing just that. Cassandra was easily my highest priority spot on the pit line, and after about 30 seconds of standing over top the tracks, I knew I'd be spending the rest of the day right here. This would also be one of the first instances I'd seen a train through some snow, or at least what's left of it. Hoping to railfan in the snow was the whole reason I visited Pennsylvania in February, although I have yet to watch a train through some freshly fallen powder. A local told me this was left over from nearly 2 weeks prior, which was kind of hard to wrap my head around, having not much experience with legitimate winters in the first place. February on the pit line also meant I was downwind of Norfolk Southern's catastrophic East Palestine derailment, whose effects are visible in the form of strictly single-stacked intermodal trains. Seeing as Class 1s squeeze every foot they can out of train lengths, I doubt NS doubled the amount of wells on their stackers, meaning that probably only the hottest half of outbound cargo was able to hitch a ride. Half the load meant the crew likely had an easy time tackling the Mountain, a steep and sharp stretch of mainline about 40 miles long in between Altoona, Gallitzin, Cassandra, and Johnstown. Likely having an even easier time over the pit was the company geometry train, a very pleasant surprise to see cruising east on Track 3.
That was interesting, because that meant there was probably some big leagues there. That was a unique.
Taking a couple minutes to look around, Cassandra's popularity becomes clear. It's one of multiple noted lookouts along the Pittsburgh line, with the Mountain providing an incredible region to sit back and watch some heavy-duty rail fanning action. The lookout is extremely railfan friendly, with the small parking lot on one side of the bridge and a fittingly painted picnic table on the other. Looking east off the footbridge towards Altoona, Mother Nature frames the triple-track curve quite nicely, while the famous 2-mile straightaway through the rocks looms on the west side. With a 139-foot maximum depth, this is the deepest railroad cut in the Alleghenies, a sight I'd wanted to see for years. Perhaps one of the coolest aspects was the leftover ice draping the cliffsides, the icing on the cake here at Cassandra. The overlook provides a much-welcomed 2-mile heads-up for eastbound movements, and I set up on the other side of the footbridge for the next customer at Cassandra. I can't say it enough, I was thrilled to be trackside at the lookout. It's hard to find a spot on the mountain that doesn't feature either great scenery or grueling climbs, but the overlook had both of them. The triple-track main line climbs towards the summit at Gallitzin, which means that most westbounds are on their hands and knees by the time they reach Cassandra. This particular manifest was an exception, however, with only 50 cars, and even then, listen to how hard that DPU is cranked. While the Cassandra Overlook provided an advanced warning for eastbounds, sparse radio traffic combined with a minimal view meant westbounds routinely snuck up on me. I wasn't the only one at Cassandra today. I had met a former member of GE's locomotive production department at the lookout, who was more than excited every time one of his products swept underneath us. While steel-wheeled coal traffic has been steadily declining over the past decade, black diamonds are still very much a part of the Pittsburgh Line's volume. The iconic SD70 ACU helper sets can regularly be seen on these coal drags, either providing extra muscle or friction, depending on if their host train is ascending or descending. As the double-barrel empty made for points west, an eastbound loaded drag can be heard grinding up grade 40 minutes later with 2 more GEs at the helm. With enough of a heads up for the loud, slow-moving eastbound, I was able to get the Mavic up high for this one. The train is tackling the hardest part of its journey along the Pitt Line, climbing anywhere between a 1.3 and 1.6% gradient into Gallitzin. This is the Mountain, a 40-mile-long stretch of intense double and triple-track mainline carving its way over, under, and through the Allegheny Mountains. From Altoona westward, the tracks climb 1,000 feet for 13.5 miles to the summit at Gallitzin, dropping downgrade at a slightly gentler pace towards Johnstown. The railroad employs numerous sets of SD70 ACU rebuilds out of Altoona, used extensively for manned helper service up and down the mountain to Johnstown. While customary on the mountain, it's one of the few places in North America where manned helpers can be regularly seen thrashing up and down some beautiful mainline metal. Not to mention, the locomotive model of choice is the eye-catching ACU rebuild. The helpers run with their own crew board, helping the endless parade of merchandise tackle the Pittsburgh Line. C44-9W number 9650 and ES40DC 7602 had their hands full this afternoon as 101 coal hoppers loaded to the brim checked in at over 11,000 tons of the Allegheny's finest black diamonds. It's an arduous task for the train crew, and one I very much enjoyed watching here at Cassandra, as the 2-mile-long stretch of triple-track mainline set a beautiful scene. Although not surprised to see the helpers, I was excited. SD70 ACUs are absolute brutes of locomotives and sounded magnificent as the helper crew did all they could to lift the loads towards Gallitzin. After missing a westbound manifest, I learned to keep my camera in hand, which paid off 40 minutes later when I captured an ace heading west. Remember that stack trains were one high to accommodate a height-restricted reroute in Pittsburgh. Although not a single train ID was heard this afternoon, the international containers on the bottom end lead me to believe this train is either coming from Baltimore or New York, likely bound for Chicago. No matter the train symbol though, as I always enjoy seeing some international containers provide variety. Yet again, I was lucky to have my camera in hand as a set of helpers coasted towards Johnstown for their next assignment. About 10 minutes later, and I had myself a meet as more light helpers went west on Main 1 while crude oil loads came up the number 3 track. Based off the day's results, I'm wagering a guess that track 1 is used primarily for helper sets in order for them to dodge the road trains, such as this scene illustrates. The oil cans are hugging a protective fence set up along the cut in order to alert train crews to fallen rocks. If a falling object were to hit one of the wires, an alert would be sent out warning the proper personnel of the potential danger, and they would proceed accordingly until confirming the coast is clear. Thankfully, there were no such inhibitors on this February afternoon, as an NS C44-9W and a curious visitor grind their way towards the summit. Well, that was more than I bargained for. A Ferromex SD70 ACE on the Pittsburgh line, certainly an awesome sight. Although I didn't catch the symbol on this train either, the eastbound loads are probably heading for export to Europe via Newark or Philadelphia area terminals. I don't normally go for angles where I'm above the trains. For whatever reason, I've found I like a more ground-level shot. However, Cassandra is quite the exception, providing a plethora of great angles to watch Norfolk Southern from. Track 3 was ensuring its usefulness this evening along the Pittsburgh line, as yet another coal drag pulled hard against gravity. The heavier trains were likely being routed up Track 3 in order to take the Allegheny Tunnel underneath Gallitzin. The tunnel takes Tracks 2 and 3 along a smoother route under the town, while Track 1 sees a much steeper climb to the summit via the New Portage Tunnel. One thing about rail fanning up north during wintertime is it gets dark much earlier than I'm used to. It was only about 6:40 in the evening when the dual ACU rebuilds howled towards me. Although it was relatively early, I had a few exciting days of train chasing under my belt, and I was perfectly fine with calling it early here at Cassandra. I couldn't leave too quickly though, as Amtrak's Pennsylvanian came sailing down Track 2. You can hardly tell, but their Phase 3 Heritage engine number 145 was up front. I was thrilled to have finally explored the Pittsburgh line, and I was more than excited for the latter half of my road trip to come. Thanks for rail fanning with me today. I hope you enjoyed the day's mountainous action as much as I did.